Andy, when we got together back in 2015, I came into GP and we were building a fixed odds sports betting platform, and which is still being used by a lot of operators in lots of different regulated markets around the world today. So it's nice to see that our initial hard work has been kind of picked and continued on. What's your experience in terms of, so you want to build a really best in class product? Where do you go from then in terms of having this idea, wanting to bring it to the market, building a team, and then being able to get it to market? What's your kind of general feeling on that, or how would you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a kind of amazing time because we had started doing odds comparison work very early days, which meant we had to understand pricing and we had to understand, I mean, I was going to say APIs, but I think when I started with Grand Parade, when we founded the company, the only betting company in the world that had an API was Betfair. Everybody else was some kind of, feeds or whatever that we had to harness. And then obviously, as we grew, we built peripheral but interesting products, advertising banners with contextual information in them back in the very early days. Small games, now would be called kind of free to play games, but in those days we didn't even talk about that. We just did them as marketing drivers to get people to interact with things. And then obviously as mobile actually kind of came along, because in those early days it was all web-based anyway, we started to build apps, and some of those were marketing apps. And then it just, as the company grew, and just like the unit has grown, we had kind of realized that we started to have all of the skills necessary to build a full-blown fixed odds sports betting platform. And then when you came in was because you had seen that and done that in big operators, and had come in to really kind of help us productize that and understand how that, what was needed, in a kind of architectural way. And that was very successful, as you say, and it's used it's birthed more sports betting platforms than most, I think, out there. Actually, there's many
Yeah.
people tell me that they're sitting on a version of that code, but I suppose the biggest one still is William Hill took it on the sports betting engine, and I think it's pretty still used in what is the Caesars app
Mm.
now, in the US. So we got it right, but we got it right because we also brought in some really kind of experienced people like yourself and others, from operators, and kind of put together that team, which I know the unit is doing. I was never sure whether a sports betting platform ultimately, because it, costs quite a lot to do it. It takes up a lot of energy, it takes up a lot of people. Would it be the thing that brought the most value? But actually, in a way, what it showed, and it showed a lot of our other clients, that we just had real deep knowledge and understanding as a company
Mm.
of what everybody's business was as well. We weren't a marketing company. We weren't a PR firm. We weren't a content production team with a few smarts. We weren't kind of just app builders. We were sports betting and casino, uh, like deep development teams, just like the development teams. And many people came from development teams of some of the operators like yourself. So I think that as the unit has those bones, and as you've grown, as you said, to 100 seats already, that, you always start with products that are kind of easy to build and understand and get out. And then I think you've already started to build chunks of quite serious code, which will go into some of those bigger operators. And I do think that that's the way that I think that's where the ultimately the need will be, right? There's a lot of people that can build something that looks nice, design well, might bit of UX works well, but can it sustain, can it sustain the scale and the like kind of low latency that's needed to be able to operate, what is basically a sports betting engine, let's say. And I think that most companies feel that kind of needs to be in house as
Yeah.
much, when they brought stuff in house. But then a lot of companies realize that maybe that in house is a very dedicated team like the unit.
Mm.
And that's ultimately what Grand Parade had in the end. You know, we had 50 people working for OpenBet. We had 30 people working for Sportec. We had 30 people working for Betfair, and these teams became part of their team, because it wasn't that easy actually to get that kind of knowledge quickly to be able to build up certain elements. So although development maybe has changed, things are delivered in slightly different ways. I think that, you know, simply that core experience and knowing that you've built a team of devs that can, you know, that are enterprise level, at operator level, is really where the success, you know, will lie. That's the uniqueness, I think, of what the unit is doing. And few people go into this with that in mind, and I know that you did have that in mind, that that's where we'll be able to really offer great value to bigger companies along the way, and smaller companies wanting to build the whole thing, or bigger companies that just need a siloed piece done quickly, on time, and to budget, you know, which you do when you've outsourced it. I think is the, you know, I think that's really valuable as we move into another stage, I say, where people want to move quickly.